Hey everyone, welcome to the long-awaited part 3 on my crash course for John Mayer's signal chain. Everything that I'm talking about in today's episode was requested by you guys, and it's all pretty straightforward, so I'm going to crush this out as quickly as possible. Getting right on into it, the very first thing we're going to talk about is the Electro-Harmonix micro synthesizer. This pedal was made famous during Where the Light Is when John used it on Belief, as well as I Don't Need No Doctor. Now, the micro synth works best at the very start of the chain, and if you believe that John's controller for the Continuum Tour was in fact the exact order, which I believe it was, then the micro synth for that performance was placed very first in the chain, and that's where you should put it, as you want that to be kind of pretty much the first thing your guitar signal hits to get that sound before all the drives. I will say John used the old school big box version of the Electro-Harmonix micro synthesizer pedal, not the newer version, so keep that in mind. You're going to want the old school version if you want to emulate that sound perfectly with a micro synth. Up next, we're talking about Leslie, you know, that beloved rotary sound you get on Perfectly Lonely and Love is a Verb. Now, John has actually primarily used Leslie before delays. If you look at where the Korg G4 and the Strymon Lex have been placed historically, it seems to be that they are before delays, which might go against, you know, the convention of rotary being something that, you know, I personally would think that it would go dead last. On the 2019 World Tour, the New Neighbor Inspire was used, and that was kind of like a pseudo Leslie chorus effect, and that sat after delays, but it sat before the JHS Kirkland boost and buffer system. So that's an example of John using it last. Of course, John has also used real Leslie 122s before. We know Bob Bradshaw mentioned that on one of John Mayer Gear's posts, and so, you know, if that's being mic'd behind the scenes, you're getting a blend of that and everything else. So for me, personally, I like running Leslie very last, and how I do it is on my 2019 World Tour replica pedal board, I have that Leslie Nielsen pedal, which I believe on John's actual board activated a Leslie 122 off stage. I have a Neo Instruments microvent in the loop. Of course, with the blend control, I'm blending it so that it kind of sounds like half dry, half wet signal from that ventilator, but it depends on kind of, I guess, what era you want to emulate and what sound you are going for. The next pedal we're talking about is the Electro-Harmonix Pog, and John used this pedal famously on In Repair, and during the Continuum Tour it actually sat in a loop with the Boss Digital delay pedal, and those both together were second in the chain, and makes sense, you know, he's just using clean sound, that Pog with delay. That's all that he needed in there. No drives, no nothing going on. So if you're placing the Pog in your chain, just keep that in mind. You're never going to run it on with the drives anyway if you're like trying to get the in repair sound. You just always want that with clean sound and some delay. So however you want to go about placing it, as long as you have it so that you can run things that way. Number 4 is going to be Univibe. When John uses Univibe, and it's pretty rare, it's a very profound experience, and he mainly uses it for the John Mayer Trio performances doing those Hendrix covers. Now the Univibe, again, if you go based off the controller from the Continuum era, that sat after the drives, and even just listening to it, it does appear that it sits after the drives on those tracks. Now there are some instances where, based off of images, it does look like he could be running it before the drives as well and earlier in the chain. This just kind of depends maybe on what he's feeling. And of course, there's not necessarily a right or wrong, especially if, based on what I'm showing you, it looks like John has experimented with it both ways. So give it a shot and see. If you're looking for the Continuum sound with Univibe, I'd place it after the drives. That's just my advice. The last pedal on our list today is going to be the Pete Cornish NG2. This is just the newer version compared to John's older version that he had actually before Continuum was even recorded on. Now the NG2 has an incredible buffer in it, and it's just an insane fuzz pedal. It's incredible. If you ever get the chance to try one out, I highly suggest you do. Now the NG2 is interesting because when you look at, for example, the Search for Everything World Tour and the Bradshaw rig, the NG2 is physically in a weird spot, but I think that's just because that's where they only could really put it because it's such a long pedal. In the chain, I believe it sat very early on, kind of one of the very first things in, as a nature with, you know, a lot of fuzz pedals, they like to be very early on in the chain. So for you guys, if you're trying to emulate that sound, go very, very front of the chain is what I'd recommend. Experiment with placing it after, but I do believe that John was running it kind of at the beginning of the chain. Most of the evidence we have for the NG2 suggests it's at the beginning. The image you're seeing on the screen here, you can actually see that it goes into the tuner, into a Univibe loop activation pedal, into the NG2, and then actually would appear to go down then into the TS10. And that's kind of the signal chain running there. So fuzzes, and especially the NG2, place that near the start of your chain, and especially with John, it was really the only thing he was running when he had the NG2 on anyway. And there you guys have it. That was hopefully a quick, straightforward, and to the point video on 5 more pedals and in terms of where John has historically placed them in the signal chain. Please you guys subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, ring that bell button notification. If you have any more questions on Mayer's signal chain, leave them down below and I'll get to answering them either in a video or in the comments. And until next time, you guys, as always, thank you so much for watching.